Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. And in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, we're mostly going to be talking about Star Wars Battlefront II. And how I got burned again, but I really should have seen it coming. And how, if you have a single shred of common human decency, any kind of common sense, and or you just like playing good games, you should avoid this game like the plague. There are any number of different reasons why you really shouldn't be playing, or you certainly shouldn't be paying to play Star Wars Battlefront II. First and foremost, it's just not a very good game. It's not terrible, but it's not very good. At best, I would describe it as okay. At best. Primarily, I'm talking about the single-player campaign here, and I actually got quite excited about Star Wars Battlefront II. I was going to avoid it, until I heard they were shipping it with a single-player campaign this time, and they weren't going to try to sell it to you as DLC after release. Of course, I should have known better. I don't have a beef with the developer, DICE. DICE do make some very, very good games, but storytelling is not their strong point. let's just leave it at that. I've played through the single-player campaigns in others of their games, and I really should have learnt my lesson there. Battlefront Hardline, Battlefront 3, oh, the storyline was just terrible and unrelentingly stupid. I mean, I can put up with a corny story as long as it's interesting and it makes sense, but, well, DICE don't really have a fantastic track record when it comes to writing scripts for their single-player campaigns that make the slightest shred of sense, and Star Wars Battlefront 2 is no exception. Well, that's not entirely fair. I mean, the actual plot of the single-player campaign in Star Wars Battlefront 2, and I'm going to try to not give any spoilers here, just in case any of you are desperate enough to play it. It's not that the plot doesn't make sense. It's entirely predictable and boring, but it's the actions that you have to undertake as a player in order to advance the plot that make no sense whatsoever. I'll give you a couple of examples. Right at the start of the game, your character is imprisoned on board a rebel capital ship. This rebel capital ship is, well, whatever, it's not important. You escape from your cell. You got yourself captured on purpose so that you could get on board this rebel ship. Yeah, they really did start the whole game off with the old, oh, they got themselves captured on purpose gag. It's just, how many times have we seen this now? And it's really starting to get old. But anyway, you've gotten yourself captured on purpose, you bust out of your prison cell. And initially, of course, you're unarmed because you were locked up in a prison cell. So you're creeping around stealthily, you come across your first obstacle, an armed rebel guard with their back to you, so you perform a stealth takedown, and then you try to pick up their gun. Good luck with that. No. Apparently, from a storyline perspective, this Special Forces officer, who you're playing, they really put the special into Special Forces because it never even occurs to them to pick up the weapon of any of the rebel troopers that they're disarming all the way through the first level of the game until they come across a weapons locker, at which point you think, oh, maybe a gun would be good. And the game will finally allow you to pick up a weapon. That's just one example of how stupid the gameplay is. Later on, again, trying to do this without giving away too many spoilers, but during a battle somewhere, you're flying an X-Wing starfighter. There's a rebel position below you that is under attack by Imperial AT-AT and AT-ST walkers. You're flying an X-Wing starfighter. You're armed with laser cannons and proton torpedoes. The rebel position radios for assistance. They need help fighting off these walkers. So, what do? Do you attack the walkers with your laser cannons and your proton torpedoes? And I realise already at this point several people listening to this video are sticking their hands up and saying, well, actually, Jingles, during the Battle of Hoth, Rogue Squadron reported that the armour on the AT-ATs was too strong for blasters. Well, yes, it might be too strong for blasters, but they were flying snow speeders. Those were just converted air speeders. They weren't particularly heavily armed. A rebel starfighter, like the X-Wing, we've seen numerous examples in various Star Wars movies, where the laser cannons on the X-Wings, in fact laser cannons on TIE fighters, are entirely capable of chewing through the armour on both Rebel and Imperial capital ships. So they can deal with a walker, no problem. And even if they couldn't, even if that armour was too strong for blasters, you're armed with proton torpedoes. So how do you deal with the walkers that are advancing on this Rebel position? Do you blow them away with the proton torpedoes fired from your X-Wing's missile launchers? Or do you land your X-Wing, get out, and eliminate the walkers on foot? Yes, it really is that stupid. You don't just play through the campaign as the same character, although it does mostly focus on the Imperial Special Forces Captain Iden Versio that you play in the very first level. But you do also get to play as Han Solo, you get to play as Lando Calrissian, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker. I almost wish they'd left the Luke Skywalker level out, because it is just mind-numbingly dull. It could have been great. The level that you play on is beautiful. But the gameplay in that level consists of you, as Luke Skywalker, swatting bugs with your lightsaber for 10 minutes. I'm not making this up. You have to defend somebody who's doing something. And waves and waves and waves of bugs, insects, are flying at you. So you're just flailing away at them with your lightsaber until the game decides you've done it for long enough. And then you get to watch a cutscene. It is just... it's shockingly bad. I do have to congratulate them on the graphics, sound effects, music and voice acting, although, well, when you've got John Williams' Star Wars score, it's difficult to do badly as far as the music is concerned, and when you've got access to Skywalker Sound's sound library, it's difficult to do badly where the sound effects are concerned, but the voice acting is very, very good. Got to give them that. And the graphics are spectacular, but they don't come without problems. I first tried to play the game on ultra graphics settings, and my PC was entirely capable of handling it. I was running at 60 frames per second on ultra graphics settings, but it kept stuttering. I have no idea what was going on. I would get screen freezes. They wouldn't last for more than a fraction of a second, but it was really, really annoying. The game just kept jerking at random intervals. It would be running perfectly, and then suddenly, oh, hang on a second while the screen catches up with what it was I was trying to do. So I dropped the graphics settings down to high, just to see if that would fix the problem. And I was running at more than 100 frames per second. Now, PC is entirely capable of handling the requirements of the graphics engine, but the stuttering and the screen freezes were still there, so I don't know what the hell's going on. When it works, it's spectacularly pretty, but it wouldn't work all the time, and I have no idea why. And yes, I was using the very latest game release ready graphics driver for my graphics card, specifically coded to support Star Wars Battlefront 2, and yet still graphics problems. So something's gone wrong somewhere. Also, with regards to the single player campaign, it's not very long. You get about 5 hours of entertainment out of it, and I use the word entertainment in the broadest possible sense of the word because it is unremittingly stupid, boring and predictable. Then of course we come on to the multiplayer. Now I do have to put my hand up and admit that I am probably the world's worst first-person shooter multiplayer player. I am pretty bad. However, I don't think my dismal performance in multiplayer was all my fault. 75% my fault due to my sucking. Yeah, I'll take responsibility for that. But 25%? 25% I think I can lay squarely at the door of Electronic Arts. It's mostly down to the loot crate system, and the loot crate system is another issue in and of itself, but I'm not going to go so far as to say it ruins the multiplayer, because the multiplayer in Star Wars Battlefront 2 is pretty good. DICE have always done good multiplayer games, or at least better than average multiplayer games, and in some cases very, very good multiplayer games. And the multiplayer in Star Wars Battlefront 2 is certainly not bad, but it's this whole loot crate thing that really... Here's the thing. If you're not going to shell out for any loot crates, the difference between somebody who is just grinding out the loot crates, who's not putting their hand in their pocket, and somebody who has put their hand in their pocket repeatedly, because you can't guarantee what you're going to get from a loot crate, the difference is too big. let's say you're playing a multiplayer battle in Battlefront 2, and you've just managed to accumulate enough battle points within that battle to respawn as Darth Vader, and you think, hooray, I'm going to whoop all your asses now. You're probably not. You've unlocked a hero, and unfortunately, the heroes are just not that heroic once you've started playing. Because you haven't upgraded their star cards, you haven't gotten any loot boxes that upgrade their abilities, and there's a big, big difference between a newbie hero, for want of a better word, and a hero played by somebody who's unlocked all of the upgrades for their abilities. Their abilities come off cooldown much faster, they regenerate health much faster, they do more damage, substantially more damage. It's too big a difference in my opinion. And I'm pretty sure I'm right as well, because as in other multiplayer games, when you get taken out by another player, the game will often show you who it was who killed you. Sometimes it will give you a replay kill cam from their perspective. What they do in Battlefront 2 is they don't just tell you who it was that took you out, but they show you the level of upgrades that they have. So my experience of Star Wars Battlefront 2 multiplayer has been divided. I have had fun playing the multiplayer, but I've only had fun when I felt that I was actually contributing, when I felt that I wasn't completely useless and I actually stood a chance. I mean, I'm still not particularly good, but every now and then I'd get into a game where I was capable of getting some kills and achieving some of the objectives, and at least not having to be carried by my team. And I started to notice a pattern developing. In games where I was enjoying that feeling, where I was able to get a couple of kills, where I was able to go for and sometimes even achieve some of the objectives, when I was getting killed, I was noticing that I was getting killed by players who, like me, didn't have any upgrades installed on their starfighters or on their troopers, or if they did have upgrades, they were very, very minimal, low quality, single rank upgrades. And when I was getting into games where I was just getting ruffle stomped over and over and over, often with no idea who it was who killed me, the player card that it showed me after I'd been killed, showing me who it was who killed me, they were covered in rank 3 or 4 rare or epic quality upgrades. It's just too big of a difference. And remember, this is all within hours of the game going live. There's just no possible way that these guys could have ground out those upgrades in the 2 or 3 hours that the game had been live. They'd gotten them from loot crates. And unless they'd all been getting exceptionally lucky with their loot crate drops, they've been buying those loot crates. So what you have is a situation where the multiplayer is only really satisfying, it's only enjoyable, when you're on the same playing field as everybody else, which is entirely as it should be. But when you have a system whereby people can just put their hands in their pockets, play the loot crate lottery, and become better than you, even if you're both flying the same ship, it's not satisfying, because you're not all playing on the same playing field. And what happens if you're playing a multiplayer game and you're just continually getting ruffle stomped by people who have access to better equipment than you do? One of 3 things happens. Either you just stop playing, you think, fuck this, life is too short, this is bullshit, and you stop playing. And I suspect most people probably fall into that category. Or, if you're gifted with the patience of a saint, you may stick with it for the 40 plus hours that will be required for you to reach that kind of equipment upgrade level without putting your hand in your pocket. Or you just reach for your credit card and you play the loot crate lottery. And of course this is exactly what Electronic Arts want you to do. This is exactly why the game, the multiplayer, has been set up in this way. This is why there is such a big difference between somebody who has either just started playing and hasn't put their hand in their pocket, or somebody who's been playing for months, or has just started playing and has put their hand in their pocket. They want you to feel as if you can't compete, because you can't really compete. And so the pressure is on you to give them money and play the loot crate lottery. And boy, has this blown up in Electronic Arts' faces. About 8 days ago, a Reddit user by the name of MBM Maverick made a complaint on the Star Wars Battlefront II subreddit. Now, the complaint wasn't particularly unusual. he certainly wasn't alone. His complaint went by the title, "Seriously, I paid $80 to have Vader locked." And what he's complaining about here is that he's paid $80 for Star Wars Battlefront 2, and when he gets the game, certain characters are locked. Characters like Darth Vader, like Luke Skywalker, for example, in multiplayer. The substance of his post was pretty short. He just said, "This is a joke. I'll be contacting EA support for a refund. I can't even play Darth Vader. Disgusting. This age of microtransactions has gone way too far. Leave it to EA, though, to stretch the boundaries." The game shipped with certain multiplayer characters locked. Characters like Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Chewbacca, Emperor Palpatine, and so on and so on. Now, the cost to unlock these characters at the time that MBM Maverick made his post was estimated to be something in the region of 40 hours of gameplay required to accumulate the credits necessary to unlock Darth Vader. Electronic Arts community team graced MBM Maverick's comment with a reply, and that reply has gone down in history as the most downvoted comment on Reddit ever. Now, you need to have this put into perspective for you. Prior to Electronic Arts community team replying to MBM Maverick, the most downvoted comment ever on Reddit, I don't remember the exact figure, but it had something like 19,000 downvotes. It was less than 20,000, that much I know. Now that's a lot of downvotes, but that's just insignificant compared to the number of downvotes that the AA community team received when they replied to MBM Maverick justifying the decision to lock various characters in a very expensive full-price AAA game title. Right now I'm looking at it as I record Mingles with Jingles, and 675,000 people have downvoted the comment, and that number keeps going up. It has generated quite a disturbance in the force. It's as if 675,000 voices cried out in pain and anguish and said, "Fuck you, EA, seriously, we've had enough of your shit." This, of course, is just the tip of the iceberg, although it's a pretty big iceberg because Electronic Arts have been receiving flack from every sector in the weeks leading up to the release of Star Wars Battlefront II, due to the locking of certain characters, due to the whole pay-to-win aspect of their loot crate and star card system, so much so that within hours of the game going live, they announced the complete suspension, for now at least, of the microtransaction system within Star Wars Battlefront II, and Electronic Arts DICE General Manager Oscar Gabrielson said, "We've heard that this is overshadowing an otherwise great game. This was never our intention. Sorry we didn't get this right." Now, under normal circumstances, I'm quite a forgiving soul, and I would like to be able to say, well done to Electronic Arts for admitting that you didn't get it right. However, I suspect that your and my definition of what getting it right involves, and Electronic Arts' definition of what getting it right involves, are probably two radically different things. And I strongly suspect that the only thing Electronic Arts are sorry about is that they pushed it too far and they got called out on it. They tried to screw everybody for an extra $1 when they could have quite happily screwed everybody for an extra 99 cents and gotten away with it, but they pushed it too far and they got called out. And that's the only thing they're sorry about. Microtransactions have been removed from Star Wars Battlefront 2, for now. They will be coming back, just as soon as Electronic Arts figure out a comfortable level of screwing, just exactly how much they can give us a damn good C&2 while expecting us to pay for it before we finally snap and object to it. Once they have satisfied themselves what an acceptable level of screwing is, microtransactions will be back in Star Wars Battlefront 2. You see, gamers don't mind being screwed. No, really, we don't. We put up with it. We're quite happy to endure a certain level of screwing, just enough screwing that we can tell ourselves that we're not actually being screwed. We don't have to buy those loot crates, we want to buy those loot crates. I'm buying premium time not because I feel it's necessary, but because I want to enhance my game experience. Historically, we as gamers have actually been quite content to get screwed by games publishers as long as the game is good, and the publisher is at least a little subtle about it. They take us out to dinner first, they use lots of lubricant, and they whisper sweet nothings into our ear as they're giving us a damn good rogering from behind and expecting us to pay for the privilege. By following these simple procedures, games publishers have been able to get away with screwing gamers for years, but what Electronic Arts got wrong was that Star Wars Battlefront II is not a great game. Sorry, Oscar Gabrielson. Simply saying it doesn't make it so. It's a mediocre game, and you went in bareback. You forgot to lube up, and so everybody noticed they were getting screwed. And when we gamers can no longer tell ourselves it's all just a bad dream, despite waking up to a wet patch on the sheets every morning, we are forced to respond, and that's when the internet explodes, and that's basically exactly what's happened to Electronic Arts in the last couple of weeks. It might actually hurt them. CNBC recently reported that an investor's note, whatever the hell that is, written by a financial analyst by the name of Justin Post, who works for Bank of America Merrill Lynch, had stated that the escalation of Electronic Arts concessions over the past month are a potential negative indicator of pre-order sales trends and overall unit confidence. So what does that mean then? I mean, I don't know. It's because I don't speak banker. So, I mean, it doesn't sound good, but I can't be absolutely sure. What I can be sure of is that as of 3 days ago, within days of releasing their biggest title of the year, a time when you would normally expect Electronic Arts stocks to go up, they are in fact down by 3%. Now, again, I don't speak banker, but that definitely sounds bad. And that, not 675,000 people ticking a downvote button on Reddit, but that is likely to make Electronic Arts do something. Now, I don't know exactly what it is that Electronic Arts are going to do in response to all this. We're going to find out sooner rather than later. If I was asked to take a guess, however, I would state with some confidence that what I suspect is happening right now is that Electronic Arts are furiously at work calculating what the new acceptable level of screwing is, just exactly how much they can fuck us before we once again take to Reddit and rebel. And once they have established what that new acceptable level of screwing is, microtransactions will be back in Star Wars Battlefront II. Microtransactions are not going away. They're not going away because they are insanely profitable for the publisher. Last year, Activision posted revenue from in-game content, right, not game sales, microtransactions, $3.6 billion in the 2016 financial year. That's double what it was in the 2015 financial year. Games publishers love microtransactions. It's a license to print money. Most of the money that Activision made came from in-game purchases in Overwatch and World of Warcraft. Loot crates in Overwatch and pets and mounts in World of Warcraft. Now, I don't have a problem with any of that stuff. Overwatch loot crates are completely cosmetic. They have no impact on the gameplay. Pets and mounts in World of Warcraft, same thing. These are things that people want. They're not things that people need. You can throw as much money as you want at Activision. And I realise this now puts me in the bizarre position of defending the publisher of Call of Duty World War II, which also had a very, very dubious loot crate system. But, well, looking at Overwatch, for example, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at Overwatch or how many loot crates you open, you are never going to get a loot card that makes Diva's mech capable of absorbing 30% more damage, or makes Tracer run 20% faster. That's just not what happens. And it's never going to happen, at least not in Overwatch. There's no need for it. Activision made $3.6 billion in the 2016 financial year from selling loot boxes that made Diva's mech a different colour. But the loot crates in Star Wars Battlefront II very definitely do give you those kind of advantages. Now, you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, well, it doesn't matter because I'm never going to buy any of those loot boxes. I'm quite happy just to play the game the natural way. And I suspect the majority of you are probably sitting there right now thinking that exact same thing. But it doesn't matter. Because for every 100 of you who sit there and say, nope, not gonna do it, you must think I was born yesterday. All it takes is one of you for every 100 to say, nah, what's the harm? Just this once. And it becomes insanely profitable for the publisher. And they pull in revenues of $3.6 billion a year from microtransactions alone. And that is why microtransactions are here to stay. The only way to make it stop is to not buy the bloody game in the first place. You can't pay for a microtransaction in a game you don't own. The problem in the past, and again, I have to put my hand up and confess to this as well, is it doesn't really matter how evil a games publisher is. if they're publishing a really good game, we're going to buy it anyway. I mean, come on, admit it. We do. We're gamers first and foremost. We want to play good games, and it doesn't matter how evil the publisher is. If they're publishing a good game, we're going to just lie back and think of England. I'm playing a really good game here. That slapping noise I can hear as the publisher's balls impact my ass with every thrust. I'm just going to pretend that's the sound of the air conditioning on the fritz. I don't care, I'm playing a good game. But, well, here's the thing. Star Wars Battlefront II is not a really good game. It's alright. I mean, it's okay, I suppose. It's not terrible. Do we really need to put up with getting screwed by a publisher over a game as mediocre as this? Well, at the end of the day, you have to make that decision yourself. I can only speak personally, but from my perspective, it took me long enough, but I've finally just had enough. Electronic Arts have seen the last dollar they're ever going to see from me. I don't care how good their next Star Wars game is, I'm not buying it. And you have no idea how much it hurts me to say this, because I love Star Wars. Well, you know, original trilogy Star Wars, I do have some standards. But I am no longer prepared to allow Electronic Arts to continue to indulge in rough, unlubricated, unconsensual intercourse with me and expect me to pay for the privilege. Those days are over. And that is it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.